"Mom, please slow down," I told her over the phone. She cried and whined so much that I couldn't understand a word. "Mom, give Don the phone. Let him explain everything to me." "He's not here," she sobbed. "I don't know where he is. He could have at least told me if he was going to leave after work." "Mom, I'll come now," I said. "Don't do anything stupid until I get there." I went straight to the house where I grew up and left only a year or so ago. The road was clear, and as I pulled into the driveway, I immediately noticed two things. First, this place, even more than my apartment, felt like home. Secondly, my mother was completely upset and was right. Don was not at home. Before dealing with my mother, I called him. He answered immediately. This told me a lot. Don was supposed to be the first person Mom called. If he didn't answer her calls, then there was something wrong between them. "Hi, Dee," I said happily. My joy was not feigned. I liked talking to him. The only thing that was fake about this call was what I called it. I didn't call him D like Donald. This was my little secret. I called him D for the way I thought about him for most of my 22 years. I called him D because all my friends thought he was like that. "Hi, honey, are you okay?" he said. "Yes, I'm fine," I replied. "I'm like you, always calm. This is Mom in a panic. Maybe you should stop what you're doing and come home to calm her down." "I can't do this, honey," he said. It stunned me. Don had never refused to help either me or my mother before. "I think you might want to call her friend from last night at the restaurant. Can I call you back later or see you at work tomorrow?" "Yes, I will be home as soon as I calm my mother down. I'll call you when I arrive. We'll need to talk about next week. I need to tell you something," I said. "Ah," he hesitated, and it scared me. I thought for a second that maybe Don had figured out the game I'd been playing with him all these years. "Okay, call me when you arrive. But call my cell phone, okay?" he said. "Of course," I replied, smiling. "We need to keep this between us for at least another week. We don't want Mom to find out." "Yeah," he said. His tone bothered me, and something else. Something in his tone scared me. Don seemed upset. I've never seen him like this before. This man was unbending. Even when we had a fire in the middle of the night, he was amazingly calm. While Mom and I were running around like crazy, he was calm and organized, as if this happened every day. He assessed the situation and got us both out of the house, making several trips back, carrying all of their financial documents and most of my important belongings, hauling a garden hose into the house, and almost putting out the fire himself before the fire department arrived. We lived in a hotel for 3 weeks while the house was being repaired. I got a whole new wardrobe, but it wasn't that big of a deal. Don saved my laptop, my favorite clothes, and even my favorite games and teddy bear. He also saved his mother's most prized possessions. Unfortunately, he didn't have time to save anything of his own. When I started crying thinking about it, he laughed and told me that Mom and I were his favorite things in the house. I vowed to be just like him. My mother, on the other hand, if you look up the word drama in the dictionary, there will be a picture of her next to the definition. I was sure that what she was so upset about probably wasn't that serious. I entered the house and saw that it was a mess. Mom lay on the sofa like a dying swan. There were boxes of handkerchiefs all around her, and she was crying disappointingly. "What happened, Mom?" I asked. "Today at work, I learned that all my years of faithful service to this damn company mean nothing," she sobbed. I sighed, realizing that this was another one of her storms in a cup of tea, and that I was caught. "Okay, Mom, let's start from the beginning," I said. I had no idea how quickly my life would change. "About 3 weeks ago," she began tearfully, "the company hired 3 new account managers. They are all young and just out of college. They sell a lot of products and breathe new life into the company. The old man loves them, but no one else likes them. They are pushy and arrogant." She blew her nose loudly and continued. "Anyway, Last week, one of them started being really nice to me. He complimented me and told me how beautiful and sexy I was. She stopped and looked at me because I was rolling on the floor laughing. "What the hell is so funny?" she asked. "Mom, you are 42 years old," I laughed. "I'm the same age as Jennifer Aniston," she said. "Yes, but Jennifer Aniston looks 30. You look 42 on your best day," I said. "Dawn always tells me I'm beautiful," she retorted. This was her last word in defense. She knew that if she said the magic word, Dawn, I would have to accept her logic, no matter how ridiculous it was. "Yes, but there is a reason for it," I said. "Which?" she asked. "You'll find out someday," I said, smiling. I loved having a secret from her. "Anyway, Ted asked me to meet," she said. Suddenly, alarm bells started ringing in my head. The cheesy smile on my face disappeared. "You didn't agree?" I asked. "Of course, I agreed," she said sadly. "I haven't been on a date in 14 years. A young, handsome man invited me. What should I do?" "Mom, please tell me that he didn't take you to a restaurant," I begged. "Yeah, he took me to that little Italian restaurant that Dawn always takes me to, and—" She looked at me lying on the floor, shaking her head as my dream crumbled before my eyes. "Oh, you don't know the worst yet," she said, not noticing the source of my pain. "When I came to work in the morning, he acted as if nothing had happened between us. Then I noticed everyone in the office was laughing. Everyone thought it was funny that a woman of almost 50 went out on a date with a man who was the same age as her 22-year-old daughter," I asked. "No," she answered quietly. "They walked past his table and laughed, and then I noticed why. He hung my panties on the lamp on his desk. I did the stupidest thing I could ever do. Nobody knew whose panties these were, but I was so ashamed that I went and took them. Then one of the other newcomers walked up to him and handed him the money. It was a bet. They bet each other $2 to see which of them could seduce one of the secretaries the fastest. I was shocked, but she continued talking. I really wanted her to shut up, but she kept talking. I went to my boss and explained the situation to him. I wanted to file a sexual harassment complaint against Ted. He called one of the HR department employees, and we discussed everything. Ted asked me out on a date, and I accepted. He invited me to his place, and I went. He didn't force me to have sex. It looks like I did it voluntarily. I was not drunk or under the influence of anything, and he never used his position to influence me. In fact, he was not my boss and had no power over me, so I had no reason to complain. She started crying again. He didn't even tell anyone whose panties they were. I was upset all day, and when I got home, Dawn was gone. I couldn't tell him about it anyway. "Why?" I asked. "Well, I told Dawn I was going out with some girlfriends tonight," she said. "So he decided to go to the cinema. I told him not to go see Iron Man 3 because we were going to watch it together," she said. "But anyway, when I got home, Dawn wasn't there, and I just broke down and—" "You stupid bitch," I screamed, realizing what had happened. "Terry, don't talk to me like that. I'm your mother," she said sharply, and I went through a terrible ordeal. I was humiliated and insulted, and the sex was terrible. And I came home expecting someone to care about me, and I couldn't. What can I do about it? I glared into my eyes. She has. "Shut up, Mom, just shut up," I snapped. But she wouldn't. She just kept talking and crying, so I ended up slapping her just to shut her up. She stood covering her face and looked at me strangely. "You have no idea how stupid you were, Mom," I snapped at her. "You stand there and talk about how you were humiliated and hurt, and you really have no idea what you did." "You're taking that tone again, young lady," she said. "Mom, you destroyed our family," I hissed. I couldn't help myself. I started crying. Then I turned away from her and pulled out my phone. I realized his number. As soon as he answered the call, I just started talking. "We need to talk in person," I said. "I want you to come to me. Go there now. I'll be alone, I swear. We need to talk now. He agreed, and I turned and glared at my mother. Obviously, you can't help with this, she said. She took the phone and dialed the number. I wonder why Don didn't call me and tell me he'd be late, she asked stupidly. Probably because he won't come home, I snapped. What are you talking about, Teresa? She asked. Mom, Don saw you last night at the restaurant with your boyfriend, I said. Her eyes widened in surprise. Oh, she said. Well, that complicates things a little. So he knows that I kind of lied or let him believe that I was seeing girls, although it will take more than one lie to make him truly angry with me. Is it too late for me to make an appointment with another mother? I didn't ask anyone in particular. Seriously, Don and I, she began. Just shut up, Mom, I hissed. Terry, what? She began. Mom, you'll probably get divorced because of this, I said, shaking my head. Terry, don't be stupid, she laughed. Don and I can't get a divorce. We are not married. Mom, you're the stupid one, I said. I grew up in this house. From the age of 7, Don was my father and all my friends. Donald is not your father, she laughed. I didn't say he was my father, I said. I said he was my father. My father was beating the crap out of you right in front of my eyes. My father barely knew my fucking name when we left, and I was 7 years old. My father threw us out into the cold in the middle of winter without even a coat to keep us warm. I didn't think you'd remember any of this, she said. Oh yes, I completely forgot about the man who was in and out of prison for as long as I knew him. 4 years ago, when I turned 18, he got out of prison and then was killed while trying to rob someone. You and Don talked about it and decided not to tell me. Although you could, because I didn't care. I didn't tell you about other things either. I didn't tell you that I knew Donald was awake holding you when you woke up in the middle of the night screaming that my father was abusing you or forcing you to have sex with his friends. She looked at me in shock. I'm lucky, Mom, I said. All the shitty memories were pushed out of my psyche by better ones. I have memories of vacations at Disney World. I have memories of exciting birthday parties and swings in the yard. My performance in 4th grade when I forgot my line and froze. He whispered it loud enough to get me back on track. When I wasn't doing well, my father would encourage me and make me feel better. He praised me. He was always so proud of every little thing I did. Maybe my father never paid any attention to me, but my dad fought over my poor softball performances. I guess I never realized you felt this way, she said. Tears were streaming down her cheeks. I think maybe he's a father figure to you. But Don and I don't have that kind of relationship. We're just housemates. I am a strong, independent, modern woman. After your father, I never wanted a permanent relationship again, and I just started laughing. Mom, we were homeless. We had no money in the middle of winter when he found us and took us in. He gave you your damn job. Do you pay rent here? No, but, she began. Mom, where do you sleep? I asked. Well, we have an agreement. We are both healthy adults. We want sex, but there are no emotional attachments and... Nonsense, I snapped. This house has 3 bedrooms. You moved into his room after just 6 months. You could return to the guest room whenever you want. Whenever you are ready to go to bed, you drag him there with you. And when it comes to sex, you like everything he does to you. The average married couple has sex once or twice a week. We're still here, she quipped. Actually, this is probably what I need to erase the bad memories of sex with Ted. He treated me like a bitch, and... She stopped when she saw me shaking my head. You still don't understand, Mom, I said. Everything is over. You destroyed our family. Which family? She asked. Me, my daughter, and our housemate. This is not a family. Mom, damn it, you are so stupid. Wake up, I shouted. In our state, there is such a thing as civil marriages. You and don't have lived together well beyond the 7 years required for marriage. And if you pulled your head out of your ass, you'd realize something else. All your friends call Don your man, don't they? It's only because they're all married and—" she began. "Do you ever correct them when they do this?" I asked. She shook her head. "This new woman is from your work," I said. "The woman who hit on Don and then tried to kiss him under the mistletoe at the Christmas party last year. Why did you try to pick a fight with her again?" "Okay, maybe I have feelings for Donald, but only because." "Mom, do you want your relationship with Don to end? I mean, how long can you stay together? You have a job, and you don't have to take care of me anymore. Why are you still here? Why didn't you leave on your own? I mean, you're a strong, independent, modern woman, right? You don't need a man to take care of you, right?" She just looked at me. "Mom, who washes your back when you take a shower? Who rubs your feet after a hard day at work?" I asked. "Mom, was it Ted who made you scream, 'Take me,' in the middle of the night when you thought I was sleeping?" "Mom, I know this will come as a blow to you, but you have loved Donald for over 14 years. You didn't try to find someone to marry before this, because you've been married since then. Before you got the court to grant you a divorce from my deadbeat prisoner father." She nodded her head as if she could finally see it. "What you don't know yet, Mom, is that Don loves you too. I think he always loved me. And that's why everything is so bad. He wanted to tell you for a long time, but he was afraid because you always leave. About how strong and independent you are. I think you've been listening to your feminist friends too much, Mom. It's very easy to be strong and independent when you have a good man behind you. I wish there was a way for me to do this, show you how much you ruined everything." I went upstairs, dragging her with me. "Terry, slow down," she said. I went through all of Don's boxes until I found him. Then I gave it to her. Her eyes widened as she focused on the small box, and more tears streamed down her cheeks. "This?" she asked. I nodded. "Next week is our family anniversary," I said. 14 years ago, on Monday, Don found us. He wanted to ask you to marry him for real. He wanted to make us a real legal family. For some reason, this mattered to him. I think he wanted to be able to tell you how he felt about you instead of just telling me how he felt about you." Then the biggest, stupidest smile appeared on her face. I took the ring back before she could open the box. "So I'll just talk to him," she said. "The fact that I lied about dinner is not a reason for us to break up." "Mom, he saw you at the restaurant where you two go together. You lied about going out with friends and didn't go out all night with a man. Put yourself in his shoes. The woman you love had sex with another man. You cheated on him. 14 fucking years later, you cheated on him. Do you even know why Don was lonely when you two met?" She looked at me with a blank face. "He just went through a divorce," I said, "and it was fucking disgusting. Don served in the army. He was overseas during Desert Storm. He had to stay there after the war to help restore order and protect the area, so he was away for almost a year. When he returned home, his parents were helping his wife and son. They talked about how much the child looked like him. His wife tricked them into thinking she visited him a couple of times and got pregnant. I had to laugh when he told me about a conversation he had with his father before he divorced his wife. His father told him he was lucky to have a strong and healthy son. He just wanted Don to be there for the birth. Don told him that he wished even more that he had been present at the conception. The divorce was unpleasant. Don's wife did everything she could to save him. She swore the baby was his until the DNA results came back, and even then she swore the judge was skeptical of women who defrauded servicemen. He allowed Don to get a divorce without any alimony or alimony. His wife begged Don to give him another chance, but she hurt him too much. According to Don, the guy who was actually the baby's father simply disappeared after that, away from women, until you showed up. And now what you did. If I thought my mother cried when I first came here, it was nothing compared to the way she reacted when she realized what she had done. Leaving my mom crying on the couch and calling Don over and over again, I drove back to my apartment. I parked in my spot and saw Don's Mustang GT in one of the guest spots. I was shocked. Don replaced the rotors and brake calipers. His red GT now had black wheels with red detailing, and his brake calipers were the same red color as the car's body panels. I immediately got angry. If Don spends money on a car, that means he's probably going to keep it for another year. Don and I had an agreement. I used to get his old cars, and I really wanted this one. I currently drove Don's old 2004 Mustang GT. I loved my car, but I wanted it more. Our cars were the same color. I imagined what black wheels and red calipers would look like on my car. I smiled at the doorman, who came up to me and said that my dad was in my apartment. I took the elevator and quietly opened the door. Don was sitting on my couch watching TV. "We need to buy you a bigger TV," he chuckled. My 32-inch plasma is fine," I said. "Honey, the average TV size now is 42 inches, he said. "Medium means there is more and less," I replied. "Mine is one of the smaller ones. I love my TV just as much as when you bought it for me. Can we stop avoiding the topic and talk about you and Mom?" He smiled and turned away, but I still saw the pain in his eyes. His iPhone rang, and he looked at the screen and then turned it off. "She won't stop calling you," I said. He placed the phone on the sofa next to him. Even when he put the phone down, it started vibrating. He turned away from it, as if that would stop the phone from demanding his attention. "So the wedding is canceled, right?" I asked. "She didn't seem to know it was planned," he said. "I didn't even have a chance to propose to her. But going back, maybe it was for the best that it happened. As painful as it is, it would have been worse if it had happened after we got married, or even after we got engaged." "Don, there is no such thing," I said. "In the eyes of the law, you are married. If she contacts a lawyer, this is how he will act. Remember the Lee Marvin case when I was a kid? He even had to come up with a new term for the money he paid to his longtime partner. Remember they were called palimony?" He nodded. "This works for famous millionaire movie actors. I don't think it's as easy for ordinary people. We never got married. We never even mentioned it. We don't have any children together." He looked at me. "I didn't mean it the way it sounded, Terry," he said. "I know what you mean," I said sadly. "No, you don't understand," he replied sharply. He turned and looked straight at me. "Terry, I couldn't love you more if you were my own biological child, and it won't change anything between us. Our connection will remain exactly the same. Things will just be different between your mom and me and—" "But why, Don?" I said pitifully. "My mom, she doesn't have an evil bone in her body. She's not a rocket scientist, Don, but she loves you." "Then why did she—" He changed between sentences. His eyes narrowed and his voice became harsher. "She was deceived, Dad. It's partly her fault. But look, she's getting older and starting to wonder if she's still attractive. And she's met a real bastard. Do you know what he did to her this morning at work?" I bent her over my desk and— he began. "No, stupid. She said the sex was terrible. He hung her panties on." I started. "What did you just say?" he interrupted. "Sorry, it just came out," I said, looking down. At first I was too ashamed to meet his gaze, and then I felt a rush of courage rise up my spine. "But you heard what I said," I blurted, looking him straight in the eyes. "Sorry, Dad, but this is how I always treated you. And you probably shouldn't be mad at your mom because I lied to you too. I lied to you for a long time. Aren't you a virgin?" he asked in surprise. "Did you deceive me?" "Every girl lies to her father about it," I smiled. "But it's not that. We'll talk about this sometime later. For now, let's deal with one lie at a time. Growing up, all my friends thought you were my father." "I know," he said, smiling. "No, you don't know," I said. "They thought that because I told them that's what you are. I told them I didn't call you Dad because you were one of those guys who was young. You let me call you Don because hearing the word Dad makes you feel old. There were a couple of moms and dads who actually were like that, so it didn't seem very weird. And I think, in my opinion, you did a good job, so you might as well get the title. But now it's simple. Tears filled my eyes, and just like when I was a little girl, I threw myself into his lap and hugged him. Terry, don't worry about it, he said. I'm honored, and honestly, that's how I've always felt about you. In my heart, you have always been my daughter. But we have to be a family, I said. We are sweetheart, he said. But perhaps, like many of your friends' families, we are going through a divorce. But it will be easier for us. You are an only child, so we won't have to worry about who gets custody of you. As soon as I find a place to live, you can come visit me, or I can come and— What are you talking about? I asked. You already owned this house when we moved in with you. I'm not sure I could live there, he said. We have too many memories and— Dad, are you serious? I asked. You can't just give her your house. We all lived there, he said sadly. This was our home. He stopped and smiled at me. Maybe I should give the house to you, he smiled. That makes the most sense. In a few years, you will get married and hopefully have children. A growing family will need a house, not some small apartment. You can even keep your mother with you until your second child is born, unless you have two children of the same sex. Dad, she won't survive without you, I said. You've spoiled her so much over the years that she just doesn't know how to take care of herself. I'm not even sure she'll be able to sleep without you tonight. He just shrugged. I think he was just being human. But it seemed like the thought of Mom not being able to sleep made him feel better. Perhaps it was a normal reaction to think that the person who hurt him also felt his loss. Perhaps this was some confirmation that he mattered. Dad, I have an idea, I said. Why don't you stay in my guest room until we figure this out, or until you find a place to stay, okay? Dad agreed, and we sat in front of my TV and watched our regular shows. We tried not to talk about what was happening, but it was there in the room with us. Later, Dad went to bed in my guest room, and I called Mom to see how she was feeling. She answered the phone on the first ring. Terry, have you heard anything from him? She asked. She was excited. Yes, Mom, I said. He's in a lot of pain, but other than that he's fine. I didn't want to lie to her, but I wasn't going to tell her he was here. Mom, we will get through this, but you need to realize that almost all of this is your fault, I said. I could hear the pain in her voice as she answered me. Terry, you're right, she sobbed. I was so stupid. I didn't know that I was married. When I meet my friends, we all talk about how we are strong and independent women. And the first scammer who praised me a little was able to separate me from my panties. I'm ashamed of this, but I'm even more ashamed because he alienated me from Dawn. I guess I wanted to have mine and eat it too. I wanted everyone to see me with a young, attractive man on my arm. I thought they would see me as beautiful and mysterious. It's stupid, but this woman really wanted Dawn. She didn't know what our relationship was. I didn't tell her that we weren't married and that Dawn was free to date other women. I just got angry. And Dawn, he hinted, but I literally had to beat him out of admitting that it was our shopping trip that brought back his interest in regular sex. So he came up with a solution, she continued. Even over the phone, I could hear the joy in her voice. He thought you two should start dating, right? I asked. No, he suggested that the two of us set a schedule for what days we could meet. It was a really stupid and confusing proposal. Like, he gets Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as visiting days. I get Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. The one who stayed at home would watch over you. By then, I trusted him enough to leave you alone with him, so it might have worked, but I had a better plan. I told him we should just have sex with each other. I think he almost had a heart attack, she said. But we agreed. We set all sorts of rules about how we would do it and when. It was strange for both of us. I just looked at it as a convenience. I was still in the hate men phase, but I didn't want Dawn to sleep with other women. For some reason, Dawn didn't even seem like a man to me. In the back of my mind, I was also thinking about survival. I understood that we were in a very fortunate position. I assumed that if Don started dating, sooner or later he would meet the woman he wanted to be with, and then you and I would have to move out. The whole sex thing was funny. In the days leading up to the first time, there was madness between us. On the one hand, I really wasn't happy about it. Don wasn't the bad guy type like your dad. We didn't have that hormonal pull. Sex was just supposed to be something I let him do to repay what he did for us, but also to make sure he didn't find someone else. Don, on the other hand, was very nervous. He was almost too polite. And later I found out that there were two reasons for this. The first reason was that Don didn't want to do anything that would make me change my mind about our sex. The second reason was that he found me attractive. In all the time we lived together, he never told me about it. He didn't hang around trying to peek at me after my shower or look up my skirt. He didn't try to grope my butt or anything like that. He was too decent for that. But it was the sight of his reaction to me bending over in those skirts that made him ready to forget his ex and move on. I still remember sneaking into his room the first time you were asleep. She laughed. I thought I would just come in, give him what he wanted, and quietly leave. I thought it would take about 20 minutes. I spent more than 2 hours there. It was the best sex of my life. She laughed, and I jumped in surprise. Terry, honey, we all have different tastes, she said. Don is not Superman. What he did was make me feel loved. He was so gentle and attentive. He made sure I liked it too. Have you ever heard the expression, drive it like you stole it? That's how your father was with me. Donald treated me more like a prized collector's car. I think you remember that we had 3 bedrooms at home. Initially, we all had our own rooms. When you grew up, we decided that we needed an office so that there was a computer and where you could do your homework. Honey, that was a lie. Well, we really needed a home office, but the real truth is that I enjoyed sleeping with Don so much that I wanted to do it every night. It wasn't just about the sex, Terry, it was everything. As I told you, I originally had nightmares when we first moved in. Don held my hand and massaged my back until I fell asleep again. But that's nothing compared to sleeping through the night in the arms of a man who actually cares about you. I've never experienced this with your father. Your father, that scoundrel, just had sex with me, rolled over, and fell asleep. He didn't hug me or even touch me after that. With Don, I felt protected and loved. God, Terry, I'm such a fool. Mom, we'll fix this, I said. Go to bed, and we'll talk tomorrow. When we hung up, I wondered if there was a way to fix this. As I passed the guest room on my way to bed, I heard Don tossing and turning. I felt sorry for him. I'm fast asleep. Things enter my conscious and subconscious mind while I sleep. My brain must be on a bit of a lag because sometimes I become aware of things in my dreams, but I don't realize their meaning until I wake up. Over the next few hours, I remember Don getting up to go to the bathroom or get something to drink. But I also remember my front door opening and closing. I stood up for myself when I realized this. I thought Don just got up in the middle of the night and left. I decided to get up and check on him. I looked into the room, and what I saw shocked me. Don didn't leave at all. I ran to my room, grabbed my phone, took a few photos and a short video, then closed the door and went back to bed. When I woke up in the morning to get ready for work, my mother was sitting at my kitchen table. "Do you want me to make you coffee?" she asked. "I miss Don so much," she said. "Last night I couldn't sleep. I was completely exhausted, but could not sleep. I came here. I thought I'd visit you for a while instead of trying to sleep in that big empty bed. I slept in your guest room. This mattress is incredible. I slept like the dead. But when I woke up, my problems were still there." "Mom, do you even know what happened?" I asked. "What do you mean?" she asked. "Mom, I think I know why you slept so well," I said. I took out my phone and showed her the photos. Mom and Don were so used to sleeping together that they probably didn't think about their problems. When Mom came and went to bed, Don probably got up for a drink or something. He just returned to bed and instinctively hugged her. In the photographs, Don was pressed against my mother's butt. With one hand, he held her breast. Even though they were both fully clothed, it was one of the most erotic sights I've ever seen. Even in their sleep, they took each other's form. Mom opened her mouth when she saw the photographs. "When did you take these pictures?" she asked. "Late last night or early morning," I said. "You slept together last night." "Mom, it wasn't the mattress that put you to sleep." "But he's not there," she blurted out. Then the strangest expression appeared on her face. "I remember him getting up to go to work. It was like every morning. Only he didn't come back to kiss me goodbye." I just shook my head. "Mom, if you and he are just roommates or domestic partners or whatever you want to call it, why does he kiss you goodbye in the morning?" I asked. She looked down at her feet. "I don't know. We just do it," she said. "I know that all this just confirms your words even more. But, Terry, I don't care. I just want him back." I didn't really know what to say to that, so I just nodded. I noticed that my mother seemed to be in no hurry to go to work. When I left the apartment, she was still sitting in her robe and looking at her cup of coffee. When I got to work, the first thing I did was check my messages. There was the usual mixture of business and personal matters. 2 letters from guys who wanted to know about my current project, and 3 from friends who were curious why I wasn't at the bar we usually hang out at last night. "Thank you," said a voice behind my shoulder. "Dad, I have nothing to do with this," I said. "It was just her and you." "How was it with me?" he asked. "I went to bed alone and woke up next to your mother." "Oh, Dad, look at this picture," I said, showing him the same picture. "You tossed and turned and got up to drink all night until you suddenly calmed down and slept the rest of the night. Should I even tell you when you calmed down and went to sleep?" "Okay, I miss her," he said. There was never any doubt, at least in my mind, how I felt about your mother. "Yes, Dad, it happened," I said. "You buy her birthday and Christmas gifts. You even buy her flowers for Mother's Day because she cries out loud. She and I talked about how you always kiss her goodbye every day before you go to work. But have you ever told her about this? Do you love her?" "Well, no," he said. "That's it," I said. "But she's the one who always says that she doesn't need a man in her life. How many times did she say that she would never marry again? I was just thinking about this last night. Over the past few weeks, I've let you convince me that I should ask her to marry me. But now I'm not sure that was a good idea. Hell, I'm not even sure she would have said yes. Said no. Then it would have been very awkward between us. It would probably change everything, and it would be too strange for us to stay in the same house. So, in a way, maybe that's a good thing." "No, this is not good," I said. "This is a terrible mistake that should never have happened. She feels terrible about this. I think that when you two get home tonight, you should sit down and talk about this, like every other problem we've had. I remember the time you two found out that I tried marijuana. I still remember coming home and overhearing you talking about how to deal with it. I don't remember you ever being able to handle it. I'm just not sure how I'm going to be able to face her," he said. "She's a grown woman. She can do whatever she wants. We're not even married. I have no right to tell her what she can or cannot do. What it all comes down to is that she somehow hurt my feelings." "Damn it, Dad," I screamed. I walked through my office and closed the door angrily. "Take another look at this photo." "I was asleep," he said, "and her hand is on top of mine, so." "Obviously, she wanted you to do it," I said. "And that's exactly what I want to say. You use a lot of terms and words here. You talked about rights. You said that she can do whatever she wants and that you two are not married. If this is true, then why is she crying in my apartment because she knows she screwed up? You said you're not married, Dad. That scares her the most. If you were married and she did this, at least you would be together legally and mentally until the court grants you a divorce. She doesn't even have anything to do with it. She thinks you can just leave her and find someone else. She goes crazy just thinking about you. Do you know that this was the reason why she was crazy about this friend of hers many years ago? This was also the reason why she suggested that you two start sleeping together. She doesn't want to see you with someone else, Dad. She just doesn't know how to tell you. Well, going out and sleeping with some jerk is definitely not the best option, he said. Here we go again, I said. I think that's largely what's happening here. You two see it completely differently. My mom screwed up. She's so used to listening to all these single and divorced women at work who go out, and they're always having casual sex with a bunch of guys who don't care about them and who almost never call them back. They not only get used to it, but also seek it out. They tell themselves that they don't need a man in their life, and that relationships only complicate the situation. This may not be true in every individual case, but a lot of these strong, independent women my mom hangs out with are just women who couldn't get a man. Mom's getting old, and when women reach a certain age, they start to wonder if they're still attractive, and that's what I'm talking about, I said. What? He asked. You know what I'm talking about, I said, even when I brought up the fact that she doubted whether she was still attractive or not. You made such a stupid face. Dad, my mother is not the most beautiful woman on the planet to anyone but you. Most people see her as just a normal woman. I would love to have her breasts, but I don't envy her having such a big ass. See, you just did it again. I need to go to work, he said. I'll call you later, honey, and I'll think about what you said. Maybe in a few days I'll try to talk to her. But now it hurts too much. I understand what you meant when you said we saw things differently. Your mother and I were not married. We didn't have a relationship because we never formally established one, so I didn't do anything wrong to her. In different ways, your mom is afraid of relationships. Her track record is 100% bad. Darling, you have had much more experience in relationships. You dated in high school. You learned how to do something, work, and when it's time to give up. Your mom stayed with one guy until he kicked her out. Maybe she thinks all guys are like that, so she just didn't want to be in a relationship anymore. Locked up allows her to do whatever she wants. On the other hand, I think for a long time I thought that your mom and I were together. Like you said, I never told her that in the exact words. I may have been walking, but I couldn't talk. Maybe I didn't want her to feel locked in or forced to be with me, but I think I've thought of it as mine for over a decade now. Like you said, I never told her this in direct words. Maybe I walked through life, but did not speak out loud. Maybe I didn't want her to feel locked in or forced to be with me. But I think that all these years I saw her as my life partner. So when she came out and gave herself to another man, it hurt me, and I really love her. Or I did. But now I don't even know what I feel. I just need some alone time. I'll call you back later. The day at work passed without any special events. My father and I work in the same company. He is an engineer. I am in the finance department. We see each other all the time and often have lunch together. When I returned home in the evening, I was so caught up in the workday that I fell back into old habits. As usual, I enjoyed the trip home. I enjoyed maneuvering through slower-moving traffic. I loved the sound of my Mustang's exhaust and the surprised looks from other drivers when they realized a girl was driving. It was obvious that I learned to drive from my father. Like him, I always tried to outpace or pass every Camaro, Challenger, or Charger I saw. In muscle car wars, brand supremacy must be maintained and defended religiously. At the same time, if I merged with the road, I let the Chargers or Challengers or Camaros join in, because we are all part of a special brotherhood. We can compete with each other, but only because we respect each other so much. I don't have the same respect for Toyotas or Hondas. As I walked into my apartment, still laughing at some guy in a Prius who rolled down the windows and tried to talk to me, I noticed someone had cleared out. I'm not a pig, but I do most of my cleaning on the weekends. The place smelled good. Someone was cooking. My mother went into the kitchen. She had her hair done and was dressed very sexy. She made a roast with carrots and celery. This is one of my father's favorite dishes. She looked at me and smiled, then looked around. Did you arrive before dawn? She smiled. I looked at her in confusion. Actually, Mom, I don't know where Dad went. We were talking at work today and, as I said this, I opened the oven and looked at the roast. I dipped my finger in the sauce to grab a piece of celery and burned my finger. Damn, that's hot, I cursed. This is what happens when you stick your fingers in a hot pot, she chuckled. I thought you were just heating it up for dinner, I said. Okay, I understand about the burnt fingers, she said. Keep talking about Dawn. I took out a plate and started eating. While I was eating, I told her about the conversation. Her face became more and more sullen the more I spoke. What do you mean he needs space? She asked. Mom, Dad didn't know you were in bed with him. He went to bed and fell asleep. When he woke up, you were together. He got up, took a shower, got dressed, and left. When I showed him the photos, he was very embarrassed, I said. What does he have to be ashamed of? She asked. I called several of my married friends. I didn't tell them the specifics of the problem, because it's none of their business. I just told them that I messed up and that I wanted Don to forgive me. From what I understood, if a man did something wrong, he should buy the woman flowers. If it's the woman who screwed up, she should cook the man his favorite dinner. Then the one who screwed up apologizes, they have sex in reverse and live happily ever after. Mom, you're out of your mind, I said. If a married woman sleeps with another man, it is an insult to her husband and their marriage. In about half of the cases, this ends in divorce. I think it comes down to whether the man is willing to forgive her. You probably don't know, but Daddy loves you and... I began. I know he loves me, she said, and I love him too. I just didn't know we were married. Okay, Mom, just give him a few days to get over this, and then you can sit down and talk, I said. After seeing the pictures of you last night, I'm sure you won't be separated for long. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched my parents engage in some sort of strange game of musical chairs. Mom stayed with me for the first few days until she found out that Dad was staying at our house. Then she decided to return home. I think Dad drove into the yard, saw her car, and came to me. After a couple of days of this, Mom returned to my apartment and Dad checked into a motel. Then the situation worsened, and it wasn't the fault of either of them. It just happened to happen at the wrong time. Dad had to travel to an engineering conference that was being held in another state. The conference lasted a week, and Dad had to leave a couple of days early to set up a booth, so he was away for about 10 days. This meant that by the time he returned, they had been separated for almost a month. Mom looked terrible, and he still wouldn't take her phone. Mom had problems at work. Ted was reprimanded for his behavior, and since then he has done everything to make life difficult for his mother. He acted as if he had done nothing wrong. In his opinion, he simply invited the woman on a date. She accepted the invitation. They had a good time together and went to his place where they had consensual sex. In his opinion, the bet and the humiliation that destroyed a relationship that lasted almost Ted's life meant nothing. His mother's panties hanging on his desk were also completely innocent. He just hung them on the table so he wouldn't forget to give them back to her. Mom lost her temper. She tried to make him take responsibility at work for something that had nothing to do with work. A reprimand in his personal file will be considered for a long time and may even interfere with his promotion. He blamed his mother for everything. He said she was a treacherous aging woman who was out to get him into trouble. She was upset because, in his opinion, the sex was just normal. He didn't even know she was in a relationship. If she was busy with someone, she should have simply refused when he invited her. At Mom's work, many colleagues took sides. The other women who were lured into bets between Ted and his friends all talked about how the men took advantage of older women who were especially vulnerable to their charms. A few women were even in struggling marriages. Some employees thought the men were just scum. Others thought that women, including my mother, were just stupid bitches who got what they deserved. I just wanted my parents to get back together. When Dad returned, I gave him a few days to get settled and then convinced him to have dinner with Mom. She looked terrible. She had large circles under her eyes, and all her energy seemed to have disappeared. Of course, I had dinner with them. I can't cook to save my life and was sure they would need a judge. At first, everything went well, I hoped, but over time they became quieter and quieter. There was an elephant in the room. There were two of them, if not more. After a while, I decided to push things a little. Okay, Dad, I think Mom wants to talk to you. Maybe you should clear this all up and... He raised his hand to stop me. Really not necessary, he said. While I was away, I thought a lot. I overestimated the situation. Let's just leave this behind. I was shocked. It wasn't like him at all. Mom smiled the biggest smile I've seen since this all started. Are you really serious about this? She asked. He nodded and started eating. Mom was too excited to eat, and I was still in shock. So can I go home? She asked. I never stopped you from coming home, he said between bites. No, but every time I was there, you weren't there, she said. It's not home without you. It's just a house. I noticed that Dad did not answer her, and his face remained impassive. It was as if he was wearing a mask. Well, it's good to see things going back to normal between you two, I said. I probably took it in words. I wanted to understand what was going on in his head. It will probably take some time, he said. Mom's head lifted and her smile faded a little. And I will never make that mistake again, she said. I'm really sorry. Dad looked at her, and in the coldest voice I had ever heard him say, You have nothing to apologize for. I should be apologizing. Mom is not the wittiest person, but even she realized that something was wrong. Of course, she took it the wrong way, but at least she understood that something was going on. What is her name? She asked sharply. Whose name? He asked. The bitch you cheated on me with to even things out, Mom blurted out. That's why you suddenly decided to forgive me. I am not stupid. While you were away, you found some bitch and slept with her. Now that we're even, you're ready to just forget about everything. But there is a difference, and you know it. I was deceived and humiliated. What I did happened by accident. What you did was intentional and meant to hurt me. So tell us about it. Just rub it in my face. She was younger and more beautiful than me, wasn't she? Marlene, I have no idea what you're talking about, Dawn said, looking her straight in the eyes. If you want, I'll take a lie detector test. I didn't sleep with anyone while I was away. I haven't slept with anyone since the last time you and I think my mother then realized that he was telling the truth. She smiled nervously, as if she was expecting another shoe. Then why do you have to apologize to me? She asked. I'm the one who ruined everything. Dawn, I swear to you. You didn't ruin anything, he said. I ruined it. Even I was puzzled by his new perspective on the situation. How could you mess up? She asked carefully. I acted like a child, he said. I have to admit, I was jealous and insecure. I played too hard. Mom frowned as she thought about his words, but to me the message was clear. Dawn, you didn't ruin it, she said. Your reaction was quite understandable. No, he said. It was childish and inappropriate. This will not happen again. Of course it won't happen again. I already told you I won't do this again, so you won't have to be jealous, Mom said. That's how it will turn out, he said coldly. It's none of my business. You are a strong, independent woman. You can make your own decisions. So let's be clear, she said. Will you forgive me, just like that? Can we go home together, just like that? What I'm trying to convey to you is that you have nothing to apologize for, he said. I must ask you to forgive me. Why should I forgive you? She asked. I do not understand anything. Can we just forget about this? He asked. No, she said. What did you do wrong? I can't forgive you if I don't know what you did. I already told you, he replied. I overdid it and overestimated the situation. Imagine that I'm stupid, my mother said. Please tell me exactly what you mean. When I say I overdid it, I mean that in these 14 years, apparently, I forgot how we started. I guess you couldn't know it because I never said it directly in words, but I always had certain feelings for you. I apparently projected my feelings onto you and somehow assumed that you felt the same way about me. This was my mistake, which I will not repeat again, and having overestimated the situation, I behaved as if my feelings for you gave me some kind of rights or position in your life. Again, I apologize, and this will not happen again. Everything you did was right and actually thoughtful when you think about it, and I. No, Dawn, she cried. You couldn't be more wrong if you tried. I spoiled it all. I just wish I knew how to fix it. There's nothing to fix, he said. Dinner was great. I'm going for a ride. Are you going to sleep here or? I'm going home, my mother said quickly. My dad hugged me goodbye like he always did and nodded to my mom. After he left, we just looked at each other. What do you think about it? I asked. What are you going to do about it? What? Mom asked. He's still angry with me, but we will find a way out of Thizo. Now we have a chance. I can't wait to get into that bed, and he hugged me. I really need this. I've been feeling pretty lousy lately. I just looked at her. Mom, were you here to have the same conversation as me? I asked. She looked at me and tried to smile. Mom, I think he's writing you guys off. He completely takes the position that it was his mistake. He says he was wrong, upset, being upset about all this because he assumed that you guys were in some kind of relationship, but he sees now that you didn't. Essentially, he says that he loved you and thought you felt the same about him, but it was all just his mistake. Well, that's not true, she said, realizing for the first time what was happening. I love him. I love him and much more than I have ever loved anyone. He should know this. He's just being stupid. No, Mom, he's being passive-aggressive. He's hurt, and that's just his reaction to it. The man clearly loves you so much that the thought of you doing what you did drives him crazy. I'm telling you, you two are weird. First of all, it's you, Mom. You are the very embodiment of a broken toy, in love with a man who simply used you and abused you. You cried for that idiot and kept telling him that you loved him. I don't remember much of it because I was only 7 or 8 years old when he kicked us out. But I remember that I didn't like him. Then Dawn finds us. You were maybe 26 or 27 when we met Dawn. This is where everything stops making sense to me. You got pregnant with me when you were 18 and had to marry that idiot. This means that you were only with him for 7 or 8 years while I was alive before that. You are 42 now, Mom. We were with Dawn for 14 years. In all this time, you never once told him that you cared about him. How the hell does this happen? The first morning after it all happened, you whined because he didn't kiss you goodbye before going to work. The strange thing is that I can see how it works from his point of view, but not from yours. Explain to me his point of view, she said. In any case, you always take his side, from early childhood. Mom, Don is just as bad as you, but at least he makes sense. When we first moved in with him, we went through hell. We had nowhere else to go. My grandparents on your side wanted nothing to do with him. We literally had nowhere to turn. Don received us. He was generous to us, but not out of the kindness of his heart. Don has lived alone since he divorced his first wife. He was so angry that he cut himself off from everyone. After about a year, he became lonely and didn't want to be alone anymore. We also came at just the right time. Anyway, I started following Don everywhere. And yes, Don was my father growing up. I lied to all my friends and told them that he was my father, and he was in every way that mattered. No, he is not my biological father, but he is still my father. He was attentive and took care of me. I grew up without much evidence of the trauma we experienced. On the other hand, you seem to need to prove something to someone. Maybe it was you yourself. that you don't need a man, and that no one controls you. You need to let everyone know that the abuse my biological asshole inflicted on you will not happen again. But Mom, Don never tried to control or abuse you. While you were running around telling people how strong and independent you were and how proud you were to be single, he took care of us. While you were screaming at the masses that you would never get married again, you already were. Mom, you were like one of those tall, weak trees. You stood proudly above everything. You told all your friends and everyone you knew what you would do, whatever you would do, but you weren't standing alone all this time. He supported you. However, don't be upset because I have the same problem. I am strong and independent. I'm in my early 20s. I have a college degree and a great job with a future. Yes, my father gave me a job. But, Mom, I don't want to be strong and independent. I want what you have. The problem is that Dad is hard to follow. The way he treats you, and I need a guy who will treat me the same way. They're just really hard to find. And what do you think I should do? She asked. Mom, to be honest, I don't know, I said. I know that if you want things to have any chance of going back to the way they were, you need to really step up your game and let him know how you feel about him. That Dad is difficult to follow. I see how he treats you, and I need a man who will treat me the same. They're just really hard to find. So what do you think I should do? She asked. Mom, to be honest, I don't know, I answered. I know that if you want to have a chance to get things back the way they were, you will have to work hard and show him how you feel about him. We know he loves you. He wouldn't be so hurt and upset about what you did if he didn't love you. I think you'll have to do like Jane Seymour. She looked puzzled. Do I need to dress like a doctor in the Wild West? She asked. Not Dr. Quinn, I said. Jane Seymour, you know, the whole open heart jewelry thing. If your heart is open, love will find its way to you, she says in all those damn commercials. For the next few days, I seemed unable to focus on my life because I was so deeply involved in my parents' problems. My dad called me every day or came over and invited me to lunch. We talked about everything except the problems that he and Mom had. I knew it was a game because he kept asking me if I thought there was something wrong with Mom. I told him that as far as I was concerned, she was fine, except that their relationship was falling apart. I also reminded him that our anniversary passed and he never proposed to her. I don't think she was ever interested in it, he said. Dad, I know she was, I told him. When I talked to Mom, I was always surprised by how insightful Dad was about her. Mom, do you feel something is wrong? I asked her. I feel a little weak and a little weird, she said, but I don't think it's physical. I think I'm just hurt that Don's not here, and Ted is terrible to me at work. What do you mean, no daddy? I said. Honey, we knew it would take a while, she said. He's very polite to me. Isn't that good? Asked me. I don't need him to be polite, Dorney. I need him to love me. I miss all the little things. I miss those times when I was trying to put dishes in the dishwasher, and he came. Sometimes he would come up behind me and cup my chest, blow on my neck, and then smile and just walk away, leaving me flustered. So ready for sex that I found it, and we did it wherever I found it. We did this on the hard concrete floor of the garage. And it's not just sex, Terry. There were days when I came home from work and he would cook dinner. Can't cook, honey, but he did his best to please me. It's all those massages on busy days and his stupid jokes on winter nights. When he just lit a fire and grabbed 2 glasses and a blanket. He filled one glass with my favorite wine and the other with his damn cherry Pepsi. Sometimes he also gave me chocolate. Just lie down together on the sofa under a blanket. We used to turn off the TV and just watch the fire. Most of the time, we didn't even have drinks. We just lay there cuddling. It's stupid, but most of those nights we didn't even have sex, and I just fell asleep in his arms and woke up. The next morning, I felt that there was nothing in the world that I could not conquer. Then I noticed that her voice sounded very rough, as if she was about to cry. Mom, what happened? I asked. Nothing, she said. It pains me to realize what I threw away. Now we don't even sleep together, let alone have sex. I used to lie to my friends all the time. We talked about how men think they can just grope a woman anytime they want and how we never tolerate it. But all this time I secretly loved it when Don rubbed my ass. I felt so exhausted. I mean, he treats me like a gentleman. We are very cordial housemates. I think I would give every dollar for him to rush out of the hallway and throw me on the bed like he used to do. He did this to you? I asked. She said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. It wasn't really serious. He threw me on the bed, and I pretended to try to resist. He started touching my legs, and I pretended that I didn't like it. Then he started touching me between my legs. But I think Don knew about my background, so even in the game, he never went too far. If I told him to stop, he stopped. She laughed then. What's funny to you, Mom? I asked. Dear, couples who have been together for a long time often experiment or try something new to spice up their relationship. Don and I were no exception. Don and I couldn't have rough sex. He simply didn't have the heart for it. I sat down with him and told him that I wanted him to take me, so we came up with a safe word. If I had told him, he should have stopped. I think we used the word orange or something like that. I told him that if I really wanted him to stop, I would say orange. Don grabbed me and threw me onto the bed. He is really very strong. He started kissing me and I screamed. No, stop. He stopped. I was so angry. We tried again and again and ended up just having sex. Don just couldn't bring himself to forcefully take me. I miss it so much. And you know what else I'm missing? What? I asked. I miss the way he looked at me. If I walked around the house in a robe, he would stare at the way the robe draped over my butt. If I went to shower, Don would suddenly decide he needed to pee. And although we have 2 toilets, he had to go to the one I'm in. It means something to a woman's self-esteem when a man is always willing to peek at her or wants to have sex for a moment. It made me feel like the sexiest woman on the planet. Now I just feel like a nobody, even at work. Ted made half the staff think I was some crazy old woman who wanted a relationship with him when all he wanted was one night stand. Terry, I didn't even want this. And one night, I just wanted flattery and attention. And this is true, very stupid, because Don gave me all this. I think I just started taking Don for granted. I had it in my head that Don's flattery didn't mean anything. I was probably so used to it that I just didn't notice. I don't know how this couldn't have happened because Don was very nasty sometimes. Don, my dad. Don? I asked incredulously. Terry, there were times when you came to eat with us and he just went crazy, she laughed. While I was there, I asked. Oh yes, she said. You went to the bathroom to wash your hands. You probably even talked to us through the door. Don was lifting my skirt and biting my ass. As soon as you turned off the water, he sat down again, as if nothing had happened. You were coming out of the bathroom, and I was sitting there, all red and excited, and Don was sitting at the table with a big one, grin on his face. After one such conversation, everything changed. I told my father about this. Of course, I left out all the details of their sex life, but I told him how much she missed the intimacy they had lost. I also let it slip that Ted was bothering her at work. This was probably a mistake. My father did not have lunch with me that day. He called me and said he needed to take care of something. When I returned to my desk after lunch, my dad called me. He needed me to come and pick him up, and he gave me the address. I thought that was good. I thought that if his car broke down, he would fix it and then start thinking about buying a new one. When I got to the address he gave me, it turned out to be a police station. I had to get my father out of prison. He was thrown into prison for fighting. I told the guy behind the counter that there must have been some mistake. My father has been an engineer for 42 years. He doesn't get into fights. Honey, your father started this, the policeman said. He showed me the video taken by the security camera. It showed a building that looked familiar to me. The video shows Don approaching the building as people were coming and going. He just stood there. A young guy who was maybe a little bigger than Dad came out of the building, along with two other guys about his age. My father said something to one of them, and the guy turned to him. My dad beat the crap out of the guy. I was stunned. I don't think he was ever involved in a fight that I know of. The younger guy grabbed his face, and my father started yelling at him. The younger guy answered something, still holding his face. His friends started laughing at him. Then, when Dad turned to leave, Junior tried to hit him. He turned, and the blow landed on his shoulder, not his face, and then it followed. Lately, my dad has been very angry, and he let it all out. He just started beating the guy. The funny thing is that the man's friends did not interfere with this. They just yelled at Dad and started calling security. It was the guards who pulled Dad away from the guy. "Where is he? And what is he accused of?" I asked. "We're disturbing the peace," the policeman said. I looked at him madly. "Your dad slapped the guy first," he said. "But it was more of an offensive blow than an attempt to harm him. He also did it right to the guy's face. The fight didn't start. You saw them talk about it later. Then your father turned to leave, and the guy tried to hit him with his back turned. He's bigger than your dad, but he's a damn coward. They each tried to hit each other, so we talked to the other guy at the hospital. It seems they made some kind of deal. Your father went there to get this guy to leave your mother alone. Neither of them plans to press charges. We charge both of them only with disturbing public order. Come down and get it." I entered the room with the cages and smiled at Don through the bars. "Come on, Mike Tyson. Let's get you out of here," I smiled. "Don't say anything about this to your mother," he said. I just shook my head. Mom took a day off from work to go to the doctor. Before I even got home, she called me and asked what happened to Dad at work. All his hands were wrapped. I think she thought Dad had had some kind of accident at work. She was really worried about him. She was hysterical on the phone. I really wanted to tell her what he did for her, but I couldn't. I promised him I wouldn't tell her. I promised not to tell him. When she returned to work the next day, she still found out about everything. Many of the people she worked with knew Dawn from company outings and parties. It didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out why Dawn came to her work and beat up Ted. Ted had taken a week off for medical reasons and was therefore not at work that day. But as soon as Mom returned home that evening, she threw herself at Dawn. She started kissing him wherever she could reach. "I knew you still loved me, you fool," she screamed at him. "He doesn't deserve you," Dawn said quietly. "You must be smart," she admired. "He never had me. It was just a mistake. I was weak and stupid. All I know is that the next day Mom was too tired to go to work and Dad's smile returned. I tried to call my mom right before lunch, and she was still sleeping when she answered the phone. "What happened to you?" I asked her. "I'm fine," she exulted. "I'm better than ever. We're, sleeping together again. I think we'll be fine. We talked a lot all night. We talked so much that I'm really tired, but I feel really good." It seems they continued to talk that evening, because every time I tried to call them, they didn't answer the phone. Mom was delighted. This lasted for 3 days until the ecstasy gave way to horror and became even worse. Dad, as usual, was the first to notice. 4 days ago, when he said Mom was acting strange, she went to the doctor. Her results, including blood tests, came back. She was a very healthy middle-aged woman. She had slightly elevated cholesterol and was 6 weeks pregnant. Even when the doctor told her, she immediately counted the days, and the dates coincided. Mom returned home looking the palest I've ever seen. Dad and I were watching TV when she walked past us. She went into their bedroom and started crying. Her dad was on edge. I followed them into the room because I knew it was serious. I walked in just in time to hear her tell him. "Dawn, I'm pregnant," she said, looking at him. "Wow," he replied with a half smile. "What are we going to?" Then his face changed too. "How many weeks are you?" he asked. About 6, she said sadly. Everything was going so well between them, but this turned everything upside down again, and this time it probably won't get any better. Dawn simply turned and left the room. Mom just started crying. After a while, I heard Dawn's car drive away. Mom, how could this happen? I asked. She just looked at me in shock. I will lose him forever this time, she said. I don't want to be pregnant. Mom, it's still early enough to do something about it, I said. Damn, you're over 40. No one will blame you for not wanting to experience this. It doesn't matter whether I do it or not, she said. The damage has already been done. He knows, and he will never forgive me. Mom, he loved you enough to forgive you for the act itself. Maybe he will see that this is just an unforeseen result of the original mistake, I said. Terry, now you're the one who's stupid, she snorted. Dawn's first wife became pregnant by another man while Dawn was overseas on duty. He divorced her. I was happy enough for him to love me. So now his second wife got pregnant by another man. What do you think he'll do, Terry? It was difficult for him to forgive me when not many people knew about it. But now, with a child who will constantly remind him that I cheated, my life is over. I can't blame anyone but myself. Dawn did not return home that night. I don't know if he was staying at a hotel or just riding around all night. According to his mother, he returned home around 7 in the morning, took a shower, changed clothes, and went to work. Mom was late for work. She considered staying home, but just wanted to get out and do something. Later, she found out where Dawn was. Right after lunch, Ted walked up to her desk and asked to speak to her alone. They entered the meeting room and closed the door behind them. Mom said Ted sat so far away from her that it was like they were in different rooms. He didn't even want to be close enough to her for accidental touching to occur. Can we settle this without a trial? He asked. She was puzzled. If you file for child support through the court, every company where I work will know that I have an illegitimate child. This is still frowned upon in some circles. And since we can't be fair, I'd rather we just agree on an amount that I'll send you regularly. What do you mean we can't do the fair thing? She asked. What are you talking about? I thought you were being honest by offering some kind of support. Oh, I thought the honest thing to do in these cases was to either get married or pay for an abortion, he said. And we know that marriage is no longer needed. Why does marriage disappear? She asked. He just looked at her and hesitated. So I'm good enough for you to have sex, and that's it, right? She blurted out. Well, don't flatter yourself. Sex wasn't even good for me. And for me too, he blurted out. You're too fucking demanding. Look at it from my point of view. You courted me. I thought we would have a nice dinner with an attractive young man. After dinner, we returned to your place where you seduced me. I believed all this nonsense because I thought something special would happen. I thought this was what I was missing. I imagined it all, and although I knew it was wrong, I wanted to experience it. And all that happened was that some boy basically gratified himself by using me. He looked at her, and the word boy made him angry. I was man enough for us to have sex, he chuckled. We didn't have sex, she said. You were studying. A man would at least involve me. A man would take me. A good man would make love to me and light me up. All you did was warm me up and leave me disappointed, unsatisfied, upset, and feeling like I was cheated. But I'm young, he said. I have my whole life ahead of me. I don't want to be tied to a woman who is only a few years younger than my mother. Then you shouldn't have had sex with me, she blurted out. I'm definitely going to file for child support. I just don't trust you. But since we're here, how many visits do you plan to demand? None, he said, looking shocked. Why the hell would I visit your child? Isn't it enough that I have to pay for it? My lawyer suggested that I make you a one-time offer on this matter. So your lawyer thinks I should let you pay for killing our child? She blurted out. Well, I'd be willing to add a few thousand more to the expenses to pay for your suffering, he said. Kill a child and then cover your tracks with a bribe, huh? She said. Fuck you, Ted. See you in court. If I'm still in this state, he said out loud. The following days turned into a whirlwind of stress for my mother. She had to hire a lawyer. She had several visits to the doctor. Her doctor referred her to a specialist in midlife pregnancy. She went to work, came home, made a lot of phone calls, and cried a lot. Ted and his lawyer increased the amount of money he offered his mother for an abortion, and apparently she was seriously considering it. No one thought it would be in her best interest to have a child. Doctors were concerned about both her age and her fragile mental state. The mother was worried about how she would be able to support the child. She would have to go on maternity leave for a significant amount of time after the birth, and she would probably need to start looking for a new place to live, even though Dad never mentioned her leaving. In those terrible first 2 weeks after she found out she was pregnant, no matter how hard she tried, Dawn seemed to avoid talking to her. Things got even worse between them than when Dawn first found out about Mom and Ted. Dawn returned to politeness. It literally tore my mother apart. Then things got even worse. Ted's lawyer sent Mom a paper saying it was said that Ted doubts that the child is his. He used a condom when they had sex. He heard when he and his mother had sex. He had heard that Mom had sex with someone other than him, so it was entirely possible that he wasn't the baby's father at all. Until a DNA test was carried out, it refused to pay for anything. The growing tension between Mom and Ted affected both and their work. The owner of the company was worried about whether the company would be dragged into it. Either one could claim that the other created a hostile work environment. So, to save the company from possible liability, he fired them both. Mom's lawyer quickly filed a restraining order of sorts to prevent Ted from leaving the state before things between them could be resolved. Ted's lawyer countersued and accused Mom of trying to get Ted. The hearing was scheduled for the next morning. But when things got worse, they got better. Mom told me that she sat on the sofa and cried her eyes out. She had no idea what she would do. She was pregnant and in poor health. Time was running out, and she could not safely terminate the pregnancy. She lost her dad. She couldn't even tell him how sorry she was. She ruined their lives just when they realized how much they felt for each other. She needed to find a new place to live and another job, and she had no illusions that she would be hired while she was pregnant. Losing a job meant losing health insurance. There she was at the lowest point she had ever been in her life. She told me that she felt as if the weight of the world was pressing down on her shoulders, and then someone rubbed her shoulders. She looked into Dawn's eyes and saw nothing there but love. She started crying again. She was so glad he was here that she didn't know what to do. "I'm sorry if I let you down," he said. "I became a little selfish for a while. This will not happen again." She simply nodded and pushed him onto the couch next to her. He hugged her, and they just lay on the couch together. She told Dad everything that was going on in her mind. He didn't do anything masculine or try to solve all her problems. He just listened. She continued talking until she fell asleep. The next day, she woke up still lying next to him. "If you don't mind listening, I think I can help you with your problems," he said. Mom just nodded her head. She was so happy that she could not speak. All her problems seemed easier when Daddy came back to her corner. "Wait," she said, jumping up and running out of the room. While she was gone, Dad called and said that he wouldn't be at work that day. He also called me and told me to take the day off and meet them at the courthouse. When Mom returned to the room, Dad was waiting for her. "Morning sickness?" he asked. She shook her head and sat down on his lap. She wrapped her legs around his waist and pressed her breasts against his chest. "Morning breath," she said. Then she started kissing him. "I will have to appear in court soon," she said. "I don't want to waste time talking or eating." After they finished everything they did, Mom asked Dad how he solved her problems. He told her that he would tell her when they returned from court. She almost cried again when she found out that he was going with her. I slipped into the courtroom shortly after it all started. I had problems finding a room. It was nothing like the court cases on TV. I think I was expecting a trial-like atmosphere, but this was just a hearing. The lawyers argued back and forth, and even the judge got tired of it all. He looked like he was about to say something when Dad raised his hand as if he were at school. The judge noticed him. "You don't have to raise your hand," he snapped. "This is not fourth grade." "Your Honor, I've listened to all this, and I think I have a solution that will suit everyone," the dad said. "I've been sitting on the bench for over 20 years, the judge said, "and I don't see a one-size-fits-all solution to this problem. The adults here clearly don't like each other, and they are both trying to make it seem like the other party is solely responsible for all the wrong things done. In cases like these, I must find a solution that is in the best interests of the innocent child. But I'm ready to listen to whatever you have to say." The lawyers looked at Dad and then at each other. They both sat down. "Your Honor, Ted wants to take a job in another state. He doesn't want anything to do with Marlene. He really wants to leave all this behind him. He considers all this a huge mistake. He thinks Marlene is trying to ruin his life over what started out as a joke. Am I around somewhere, Ted?" "You hit 400, Ted said. "Miguel Cabrera's batting average is not that high." "Marlene agrees with Ted," Dad continued, "but only that what happened between them was a huge mistake. She wants him to take responsibility for what happened between them. At the same time, she will not be able to work much during pregnancy, so she would like to get some support and help with her medical bills, which is quite reasonable, right, honey?" Mom smiled and nodded. "My decision involves two options. Marlene can choose which one suits her best." "Wait a minute. Why can't I choose?" Ted was indignant. "Because none of them affect you, Ted, until the baby is born," Dad said. "We'll come back to your choice later." "Will I have a choice too?" asked Ted. "Yes, Ted, you will have a choice." "Damn, this is better than anything she offered," Ted said. "Language," said the judge. "So," Dad continued, "Marlene prides herself on being a strong and independent woman, but in this case, I think she needs help. I would be willing to pay for her doctor's visits and living expenses until the baby is born and a DNA test is performed to prove that Ted is the father. That way, Ted could go and find a job anywhere in the world without worrying about Marlene. When the baby is born, Ted could reimburse me for the expenses." Mom smiled, Ted smiled, even the lawyers smiled. "I agree," Ted said. "You don't get to choose this part," the judge said sharply. "What's your second idea?" asked the judge. I'm not sure Marlene would like this option," Dad said. He took out of his pocket the ring box that I showed my mother before all this. Mom's scream echoed through every courtroom and hearing room in the building. She pushed her lawyer away and jumped on her dad with such force that he fell to the floor, where she began to kiss him. Between kisses, she kept shouting, "Yes." The judge banged his gavel many times, trying to restore order in the courtroom. "I agree with that," the judge said. "I see your logic. If you two are married, it may be able to be added to your health insurance. Mr. Ramsey may reimburse any costs following receipt of the DNA results if acceptable to all parties." "It suits me," Ted said. "That's where your choice comes in, asshole. That is, Ted," Dad said. "I'm listening," Ted said. "How about this all ends?" said Dad. "No more hearings, no more trials, no more DNA. Just move on with your life." "Who will I have to kill?" asked Ted. The judge looked at him. "All you have to do is give up your parental rights," Dad said. "Marlene and I will take it upon ourselves. But this means that you will not be able to see the child without our permission and—" "Give me the papers. I still don't want to see the child. You don't even have to tell the kid I exist," Ted said. "I just want to get rid of all this, and I would." "Wait," said the judge. "So, you're going to raise someone else's child and be responsible for him until he comes of age?" Dad nodded. "I will need some guarantees and—" "Is legal adoption acceptable?" Dad asked. The judge nodded and Mommy started kissing Daddy again. But why did you? The judge began. You're letting that snake get away with it. Your Honor, I feel like I'm getting the best part of the deal, Dad said. The judge looked at him, waiting for an explanation. Dad pointed at me. Your Honor, that beautiful young lady there made the decision for me. I have known and had some involvement in her upbringing since she was about 8 years old. She brought nothing but joy into my life from the first second I saw her. She thinks she is my daughter. I think so too, and no one will ever be able to convince us of this. So maybe this time, I can be by her side for the first 8 years too. Every second of happiness I get from her is like a gift from the one who should have been her father. The only difference this time is that I actually saw the guy. I will arrange the adoption myself, the judge said. Lawyers for both sides will draw up official documents and submit them to me within 10 business days. The court is closed. Wait, I screamed just as the judge was about to bang his gavel. He looked at me in surprise when I approached the table. I thought everyone was happy, he said. Your Honor, if my dad marries my mom and adopts my soon-to-be brother or sister, we'll all have the same last name, right? Yes, I think so, said the judge. Your mother may decide to keep her last name, and from a legal perspective, the dad doesn't even have to adopt the child. In our state, children born in a legal marriage are considered the offspring of the spouses. I'll have to check this to be sure, but... What about me? I asked. Can I be adopted too? Why should I have a different last name? Why should my birth certificate be signed by someone who never cared about me? If he were alive and passed me on the street, I wouldn't even know who he was. Young lady, you are 20-something years old. You. He noticed his dad nodding his head. Okay, I'll do that too, he said. Mr. Ramsey, you will still have to provide blood and DNA tests for medical reasons, and in case family medical history is needed to diagnose any injuries or illnesses the child may have during his lifetime. The court is closed. Mom and Dad got married long before my brother Ryan was born. Dad swore that Mom, 6 months pregnant, was the most beautiful bride he had ever seen. By the time of the wedding, I had already changed my last name and was adopted. I gave the bride away myself. After the ceremony, some of Mom's friends congratulated her. One of them was puzzled. But I thought you were already married, she told her mother. We were, Mom said, but I didn't know we were married. 3 months later, the strangest thing happened. Dad wasn't allowed to adopt Ryan. It had nothing to do with Ted. He signed the renunciation form before the ink was even dry. It turns out that Ted was right all along. He wasn't Ryan's father. The DNA test results were negative. Mom started crying. She was sure there had been a mistake. I didn't sleep with anyone else, Dawn. You have to believe me, she cried. One very smart nurse calmed her down and took Dad out of the room. When he returned, he was nervous. On the day my mother was supposed to be discharged, the nurse brought all the documents. She handed the birth certificate to Dad to sign. Wait, dear, Mom said. Are you sure you want to do this? As the judge said, Dad said, all children born in marriage. But Ted is not the father, she said. I don't know who the father is. I swear Ted was the only one I slept with. I think maybe at one of the parties you and I went to. Maybe they did something to me while I was drunk, which I don't remember when I woke up and... Calm down, Dad laughed. I know who the father is. You forgot about someone else you slept with. It must not have been very good if you don't remember. I'm telling you, I didn't sleep with anyone else, Mom said. Yes, you were asleep, said Dad. With me. But... Her words trailed off. I took pills. We have sex so often and I used a condom with Ted. Pills don't give a 100% guarantee, Dad said. There are certain circumstances that make them even less effective. We have a child together, the mother said, smiling. We have 2 children, Dad said, taking my hand. We are married, my mother said enthusiastically. We always have, Dad said, hugging us both. And I've always loved you, Dawn, Mom said. I loved you almost from the very beginning. I was a little confused about my first husband, but I knew you loved me and I loved you too. I didn't know, Dad said. End. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one. 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 About listening to the next one.